Hello, crypto boys and ghouls, and welcome back to the channel, Tales from the Cryptmancer, where we feature content on play and earn games on the blockchain, such as Splinterlands. And in today's video, I just wanted to do some quick thoughts around certain cards, specifically summoners, that might be impacted by the introduction of the new rule sets that were alluded to originally at Splinterfest, but now on yesterday's town hall. And those are the rule sets that will allow all teams to have either the Thorns, Magic Reflect, or Return Fire abilities. And the question that was posed recently was, well, what does this mean for existing summoners that have those abilities? For example, Lear and Ilthane with Return Fire, Ouster with Magic Reflect, and Mylor with Thorns. The question becomes, are these summoners now nerfed or compromised? Do they lose value in the meta because these rule sets will essentially duplicate the summoner abilities? And my initial take on this is no, I don't think that to be the case. And let's talk a little bit about that. Before we do, let me just preface this that this is all theory crafting. I actually haven't had the chance to go on to the QA server as of this point and test this in theory, but my thoughts are here for basically that these summoners actually, the value of these summoners actually increases as a result of these rule sets. And why do I think that? Well, I believe that to be the case because what it allows you to do with these new rule sets is essentially limit your opponent to effectively using one form of attack if you combine one of these summoners with a complementary rule set. Take, for example, Lear with Return Fire. If, for example, I'm presented with a rule set that grants my entire team's Thorns, and I use Lear, what I'm essentially doing is limiting my opponent's ability to effectively attack me to just magic attacks, because the rule set will give all of my monsters Thorns, and the summoner, in this case Lear or Ilthane, with Return Fire will limit my opponent's ability to effectively use ranged attacks. So in that particular case, magic attacks are going to be the only reliable way for my opponent to do damage to me without taking damage back. And knowing that you have a very strong starting defense against melee attacks and ranged attacks, you could now start by building your team with that in mind. So you could start with your tank, for example, being Legionnaire Alvar with Void Armor, or perhaps Genoshanis with Void, really bolstering your defenses against magic attacks, for example, giving your team a very strong foundation for defense as a starting point against pretty much anything your opponent may throw at you. So because of this, the effectiveness of these these summoners on the meta will be pretty large because, again, you're limiting your opponent's ability to inflict damage without inflicting harm on their own team. So for me, this really amplifies the value of these summoners, and it also allows you as a player to then obviously hopefully guess correctly what your opponent will bring and allow you to form your team accordingly. So this is going to be very interesting to see how the meta evolves, how we maybe see selection of summoners in some of these tournament matches, for example, where these rule sets will exist. At the end of the day, it's going to provide some variety and definitely some new meta evolution. But the takeaway for me is that these summoners, if you have these summoners, I wouldn't go rushing out to sell them. In fact, if you don't have these summoners, I'd probably look to acquire them, just because, again, the value that they're going to bring by limiting your opponent to essentially one form of attack when these rule sets come into play will be quite beneficial. So that's all we have for this video. Again, just theory crafting at this point in time. We'll see it in due course if this does come to be a reality. But again, I don't think at this point in time these summoners are compromised. So until next time, keep stacking those stats.